Hey, Walter Sorrells back with another Knife Making Friday 5. Today we're going to talk about these hydraulic forge press dies. So I had a request this week from one of my Patreon supporters to talk about these little suckers right here, forge press dies. Now, a hydraulic forge press is a device that's used by most professional knife makers, and what they do is use hydraulic pressure to squash metal. Mostly they're used for, at least in the context of knife making, for making Damascus, but they're used for some other things, drawing out steel when you're elongating big pieces of steel and various other things. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about what these little suckers do, how they're used, and why they work the way they work. So before I get started, one quick little announcement. If you're familiar with the channel for Green Beetle, he does a lot of interesting knife making projects. He's been doing some pieces about various knife makers, and recently he did one about me, kind of a little interview type thing, so I'll include a link to that. Check it out. He's got a good channel and kind of a cool little thing if you're interested in some more information about who I am and what I do. Also, a quick note about Patreon. I've started doing something that I think is kind of cool. I'm excited about it, which is that I'm going to be adding plans for various projects onto my Patreon page, so that anybody who supports the channel on Patreon, doesn't matter how much you support it for, will have access to plans for all kinds of projects that I'm doing. Now, I'm just getting started with it right now, so there are only a couple of plans on there right now, but soon, hopefully, we'll be having a lot more. All right, let's go into the shop now and take a look at my forge press. So I'm situated here by my hydraulic forge press. This is a Riverside machine, Uncle Al machine. Lots of different folks make them, but you know, I've had pretty good success with this. Anyway, real simple machine. Behind the body of the machine here is a big ram, a hydraulic ram, and you've got two members here that hold up this, that are sort of form an H frame. You've got hydraulic fluid that actually goes into the frame itself. In here is the working part of the machine. You have dies. The dies fit in here like this. Very simple to use. They just slip in and slip out, and they have a little retaining gizmo on here that keeps them from falling off while it's being used. So there are a whole bunch of different kinds of dies. These are flatting dies or flat dies, but there are also dies intended for drawing material out, and they're materials, and they're ones that do sort of more specific things, like or ones that are used for ladder pattern Damascus and squaring dies and a bunch of that. And I'll show you those in just a minute. Why are there different kinds of dies? Well, the simplest place to look to understand how dies work is this right here, just a good old-fashioned blacksmith's hammer. This face of the hammer right here is going to move material in all directions. When you hit flat down on a piece of plastic material, plastic meaning that, you know, that it's capable of being kind of mushed and moved around, and that's the way hot metal works. When you hit that piece of hot steel, it's going to move in all directions simultaneously, and that's the way the flatting die works. All it does is it just squashes the material down. But if you're trying to do other things, and for instance here you have this cross peen, this peen is intended to move material longitudinally. And so the reason that it works that way is when you hit the material, it goes down into the material and pushes material this way, and it pushes material this way. And so over many, many strokes, that piece of steel will lengthen out. Same thing happens here when we use a drawing die. So this right here is a drawing die. The top of it is domed a little bit, and so it works just like that hammer does in pushing material this way and this way, but not this way. So as it's sitting like this, you'll put material in and it's just going to draw it out. All right, so let's go over to the bench here and I'll show a little bit more detail about how these work. All right, so I've got a big stack of dies here, and I'll just shoot through them real quickly. The basic way that they work is you have a base that's ideally probably 3/8 of an inch thick, and then you have whatever the die itself is, which is welded onto there, and then welded onto the front. You just have a little flange. You can see my fine welding here. And the flange just keeps it retained in the right place on the press without falling off. We saw the flatting die already. That's super simple. It's just a big flat piece on there. The key is that you have to have two mating pieces that fit together exactly. In this case, this is a drawing die, just a little domed piece of steel. As you can see, this one's actually only 1/4 of an inch thick. I did this one myself and just didn't happen to have any 3/8 inch steel when I was doing it. The 1/4 inch holds up fine, but 3/8 is probably preferable. There's really just nothing complicated about it. I just ground this face off of it and then welded it on there. And the good thing about this is, from the perspective of us crappy welders, is that there's no shearing force here, so you don't have to have really high quality welds around here because all the force is going straight down into the weld. So the likelihood of busting these welds, if they're not super high quality welds, is pretty low. Here's another one. This is a squaring die. Squaring dies are commonly used in making Damascus steel. You can see it's got two little valleys or one little valley in the middle, and this is where you put your stock. This is where these are typically used where you want to sort of squeeze something together. Maybe, partly it may just be because you're trying to square something, but also as in canister steel or things like that, you're trying to actually squeeze a lot of material together. You can also use this in W pattern Damascus, where you're sort of reorienting the pattern of a pre-existing piece of Damascus. So this one right here is used for making ladder pattern Damascus. As you can see, they're sort of out of phase with each other, you might say, so that the top die is pressing down into these little grooves, and the bottom die, where these bosses are sticking up, is going into the grooves on the other side. So you can see I've made drawing dies for drawing both this way and for squashing things out sideways. Anyway, that's just a few of the different kinds of dies that I have. Those are probably the ones that are most popularly used by smiths. But you can do all kinds of different things for making little holes and things, and bigger and smaller squaring dies. I mean, they're just innumerable things that you might want to do with dies. But like I say, these are probably the most popular ones used by knife makers. A lot of knife makers aspire to having a hydraulic forge press, so I hope you guys learned a little bit about them this week. See you next Friday. Thanks for watching, guys. If you feel like you got something out of this video, don't forget to subscribe. Also, click on the link to Patreon for a great way to give back to the channel. Plus, check me out on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Links in the description. If you want something sharp and pointy, maybe a gift for yourself or one of the cooler people in your life, check out my Tactics Armory website and pick up one of our tactical or outdoor knives. And finally, if you want to learn to make Hamones or Japanese swords, check out WalterSorrellsBlades.com, where you can find videos about how I make Hamones, as well as forging, mounting, polishing, and fittings for Japanese swords. Thanks, and see you soon.